Last thing I'm going to mention is two big FEMA projects that we've got going on. And if you've followed Heartbeat, our quarterly newsletter through the years, you'll see us talking about when we have the major storms come through the area and cause damage to the electric system. The electric co-ops are extremely fortunate that we qualify for FEMA assistance whenever we have that. Now there's some hoops that have to be jumped through all the way through, eventually to a presidential disaster declaration to make assistance available to electric co-ops, and you see the assistance to the small towns, even the big towns also, whenever these disasters come through. Well, there was an ice storm that happened in December 2007, and when we got that one all settled out, finally, we're replacing 41 miles of our electric lines down in Cherokee County from that one. That's a big project for us. These were lines that were damaged in the ice storm, and we get to rebuild new ones. That's good for our members. We get 75% of the cost of that reimbursed by FEMA. Costs us 25 cents on the dollar. But even bigger than that is what we call our DR 1675 project. And about 2 years ago, we made application to FEMA under their hazard mitigation grant program for a grant to help us rebuild portions of our line to provide better service for our members. Because what we were seeing is when we had these major storms roll through, we would have certain areas of the system would lose power, and we didn't have any way to get power back into that area if we lost it at the substation level, or if our power supplier or the people who own the transmission lines in the area, Westar, if they lose power on those, we lose power too. Happened up here in Bourbon County just last Saturday morning, I think, for about 2 hours when Westar lost power to 2 of our substations. We want the ability to backfeed power into those areas. We've got main feeders out here through the country that are critical feeders for us that serve large amounts of meters or serve critical loads, and we want to make those better able to withstand these major storms that come through. So with all that said, we put in this application to FEMA in their hazard mitigation grant program for $16 million. And we received notification just a couple months ago that we were approved. And that is just an absolute huge project for the co-op. It's a huge thing for the members. 75% of that's going to be paid by FEMA, so they're going to pay for $12 million. We've got to come up with $4 million, and we've got a financial plan that can do that. And we think we can afford that and still accomplish all the goals of keeping rates stable, keeping our margins where they need to be. But what do the members get out of that? They're going to get increased levels of service, and maybe significant in some areas, because we've got 374 miles of the electric line that we're going to get to rebuild based on this. And many of those miles are critical feeders out here on the system. So we'll be building them to a higher strength than they've ever been built before so that they can withstand more wind, more ice, more snow, and not have outages out here for our members. Put this in perspective, if I were to talk about it, ever since FEMA made assistance available to electric co-ops, I think that might have been back in about 1989, if I get this number right, is when we were finally deemed eligible. And we had a tornado that went over through near the town of Walnut. That was the first project that we had that qualified. Since then, we've had the ability, I would call it maybe the privilege or the luxury of rebuilding parts of our system based on the damage out of those storms. And if you were to take off and drive from here, Fort Scott, to Garden City, Kansas, that's how many miles that we've been able to rebuild based on, I'm sorry, I'm going to say this a little different. That's how many miles that we're going to get to rebuild into this DR 1675, 374 miles, I believe. If you take all the FEMA projects in, you would take off today and you drive from Fort Scott to Nashville, Tennessee. That's how many miles that we've been able to rebuild with the assistance of FEMA here. That's a huge amount of line. But let's put this in real perspective. If you took off and drove from here to Anchorage, Alaska, that's how many miles of electric line we got to take care of right there. And if anybody's been up to Alaska, I haven't, but I've talked to people, you drive for many days to get up to Anchorage, Alaska. That's a long ways. So anyways, that's a big project that we're going to start up. It's going to take 3 years. You're going to see a lot of action out around the country as you move around. 374 miles is going to touch all the counties in our system, 8 counties out of our 11 county area, and a couple of those counties we don't cover but just a few square miles in. So this is going to be all over the system. Everybody's going to see some benefits of that, and we're just really happy with that. That's all I've got to report on tonight. Does anybody have any questions that they want to ask me? Yes.
This deck that shows up
Okay, the debt that's on our balance sheet that's showing up here in the book, that's for building electric line. That debt, we would have started that back in the late 1930s when we first started building electric line, and we've been borrowing money ever since then, and then paying off on those notes as we went along too. We paid off several of them. Okay, well, a couple things. The comment was it seems like it's a very high level of debt, and then with the risk of interest maybe changing. A couple things there. Our debt, actually, we've got a few things that we look at. We try to keep our equity at 40%, so that's going to drive how much money we're going to be wanting to borrow, how much money has to come from electric rates, because we use the money from electric rates, some of the capital there. We use the money from borrowing to help build these electric lines. And then the interest rates on these notes, they're fixed. We've got just a small portion of that 21 million. We've got less than $1 million. My gosh, I'm going to say it's probably around 650 or 700,000 that's at a variable rate interest. Everything else is at 5%, 4.5%, all the way down to 2%. So we don't have risk to speak of from the interest rates changing on us. Our debt level on a per mile basis is one of the lower of electric co-ops in our size. When we look at the 80 or 90 co-ops that are ranked in our size comparison, we have one of the lower debt per mile ratios. So with that, we look at all these things, and these are, those are great questions because these are the things that the board is asking also, and we're discussing pretty regular in the boardroom. How do we know what the proper level of debt is? And how do we manage that to make sure that we don't take on undue risk for our members? Anything else? Yes.
Do we not buy any wholesale electricity from Empire?
Not anymore. I'm gonna look down. We don't have no contracts with Empire anymore. Yeah. Kansas Electric Power Cooperative. And I will just tell you, we own a 6% share with KEPCO, the other 18 co-ops in Heartland of Wolf Creek. So we get a good share of the Wolf Creek power. We get a huge amount of hydroelectric power from the area states. That's a big asset for us right there. We got 20 megawatts of our own peaking plant, just little diesel gensets sitting out there. And then the rest of that would be purchased from Westar. And I better add a 30 megawatt share of the new Iatan 2 plant coming on up by St. Joseph, Missouri. Oh yes, and a little bit from Sunflower, which is another power cooperative, electric power cooperative on the west side of the state.
I might ask another question.
Sure.
Do we have any wind power in the vicinity?
Two things I just might add there. I think we may have 3 wind turbines on our system, and I think these will, each one of them might run 2 hair dryers apiece on these 3 that we actually have on our system there. But hey, they're kind of neat things there. They do make electricity. But as far as on the large scale, yes, through our contracts with Westar, this long-term contract, yes, we get a share of that wind power into our system. Anything else? Okay, thank you much.